Did you know that long before it was known for the Silk Road and Islamic empires, Afghanistan was one of the world's most vibrant Buddhist centers? It's a story that's been largely forgotten, a silent disappearance that deserves to be remembered. Today, we're going to journey back in time to uncover how a land filled with magnificent monasteries and giant statues slowly and peacefully transformed, leaving behind a legacy that still shapes the world. Let's rewind nearly 2,000 years. Imagine a landscape not of conflict, but of tranquility and scholarship. This was ancient Afghanistan, a crucial crossroads of civilizations. In places like Bamiyan, Hada, Kapisa and Balkh, magnificent Buddhist monasteries dotted the terrain. These weren't just simple prayer halls, they were sprawling university-like complexes, bustling with thousands of monks, scholars and pilgrims from across Asia. Afghanistan was a beacon of Buddhist thought, attracting brilliant minds who came to study, debate and meditate. The most famous testament to this era were the colossal Buddhas of Bamiyan. Carved into a cliffside in the 6th century, these statues stood as high as 175 feet, watching over a valley that was a hub of spiritual and commercial activity. But the art wasn't just grand in scale, it was revolutionary in style. When Alexander the Great's armies marched through this region centuries earlier, they left behind a lasting cultural footprint. This encounter between East and West gave birth to something extraordinary: Greco-Buddhist art. For the first time, the Buddha was depicted in a human form that felt incredibly real and relatable. Instead of abstract symbols, artists created statues with realistic facial features, serene expressions, and classical-style flowing robes that looked like Greek togas. It was a perfect fusion of Hellenistic naturalism and Buddhist spirituality. This art form, pioneered in the region of Gandhara, which includes parts of modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, created the image of the Buddha that we are all familiar with today. The artists of ancient Afghanistan didn't just copy, they innovated, creating a visual language for Buddhism that would spread across the globe. So if Buddhism was so deeply rooted, what happened? The common assumption is often one of dramatic conquest and forced conversion, but the reality is far more subtle and gradual. The change began in the 7th century with the arrival of Islam. However, this wasn't an overnight invasion that wiped out everything in its path. Instead, Islam spread peacefully along the same trade routes that had carried Buddhism. Arab merchants, Sufi mystics, and scholars traveled along the Silk Road, bringing their faith and culture with them. Initially, Buddhist and Islamic communities coexisted. There are records of lively debates between Buddhist monks and Muslim scholars, a sign of intellectual curiosity rather than hostility. The new faith was introduced not with the sword, but through dialogue, trade, and cultural exchange. It was a slow, organic process of integration. People were drawn to the new religion for various reasons: its simple and direct message, the social and economic opportunities it offered, or the appeal of the new ruling elite. There was no single moment of rupture, but rather a gradual shift in the cultural landscape. A key factor in this transformation was the shift in patronage. For centuries, local kings and wealthy merchants had been the primary benefactors of Buddhist monasteries. They funded the construction of stupas, commissioned elaborate art, and supported the monastic communities. Their patronage was the lifeblood of these institutions. But as local rulers and elites began to adopt Islam, their priorities changed. Instead of funding Buddhist viharas, they began building mosques, madrasas, and caravanserais. This shift in financial support had a profound impact. Buddhist monasteries, which depended on donations to survive, slowly began to lose their resources. With less funding, they couldn't maintain their large complexes, support their communities of monks, or commission new art. The once thriving centers of learning began to decline. It wasn't a violent suppression, but a slow process of attrition. As the new Islamic dynasties, like the Ghaznavids and the Ghurids, consolidated their power from the 10th to the 12th centuries, the state's focus moved decisively away from its Buddhist past. Parallel to this economic decline was a demographic one. As generations passed, more and more of the local population voluntarily converted to Islam. This wasn't a sudden, forced event, but a gradual generational change in identity. For many, adopting the faith of the new rulers and the wider community was a natural evolution. Families who had been Buddhist for centuries slowly embraced Islam. As the lay community dwindled, the monasteries found themselves increasingly isolated. Without local people to support them, and with fewer young men choosing the monastic life, the institutions simply faded away. By the 12th and 13th centuries, the great Buddhist centers of Afghanistan had fallen silent. The magnificent monasteries of Hada and Balkh were abandoned, left to crumble into ruins. The once bustling university at Bamiyan was empty. The memory of Afghanistan's Buddhist golden age began to recede into the distant past, becoming a faint echo in local folklore and the tales of travelers. Buddhism had not been violently extinguished. It had simply and quietly disappeared from the land where it once flourished so brilliantly. The landscape itself, however, held on to the memories, with the ruins of stupas and the empty niches of Bamiyan standing as silent witnesses to a forgotten era. But the story doesn't end there. While Buddhism disappeared from Afghanistan, its influence radiated outward and continues to live on today. The monks and scholars of ancient Afghanistan were intrepid travelers. They carried their knowledge, texts, and unique artistic styles along the Silk Road, journeying east into China and from there to Korea and Japan. Legendary monks like Xuanzang, the famous Chinese pilgrim, traveled to Afghanistan in the 7th century to study and collect scriptures, which he then brought back to China. His journey was a testament to Afghanistan's importance as a center of Buddhist learning. The Greco-Buddhist art style, perfected in Afghanistan, became the template for Buddhist imagery across East Asia. The serene, human-like depiction of the Buddha that we see in the caves of Dunhuang in China or the temples of Nara in Japan can trace its artistic lineage directly back to the workshops of Gandhara and Hada. So in a way, the legacy of Afghan Buddhism never truly vanished. It was transplanted, taking root in new lands and continuing to inspire millions. Today, the archaeological sites scattered across Afghanistan are a poignant reminder of this rich, pluralistic history. They tell a story not of conflict, but of connection. A time when ideas, art, and spirituality flowed freely across continents. The silent disappearance of Buddhism from Afghanistan is a powerful lesson in how cultures evolve and transform over time. It wasn't a story of destruction, but of a slow, peaceful, and complex transition that has been largely overshadowed by more recent history. It reminds us that identities are not fixed, and that the past is always more nuanced than we imagine. Thank you for joining me on this journey into a forgotten chapter of history. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden corners of our world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.